All right. Hi, everybody. We're beginning now, right?
Yep.
Let's see. Hope you can see me there. You can see at least part of me. Welcome. My name is Sophia Thorsen, and I am a Pilates teacher and a massage therapist. And I developed this particular workshop around pain. It was as part of a larger class that I used to teach before I moved from California. I've only been here since November, so I'm just getting used to the thunderstorms in the spring. It's fascinating. The weather can just turn like that. That's pretty cool. This is everybody's telling me this, so you know we'll see. I'll see in another few years if this is what this means. Anyway, I used to teach a class at a massage school called Touch, Health, and Common Conditions, and I taught a lot of the anatomy and physiology of that course. And this was kind of the last part of the chapter on the nervous system. And what I really found with my students who were trying to become massage therapists was that by learning about pain, they actually started to be able to put the very kind of esoteric and what felt like a lot of minutia of the anatomy and physiology of the nervous system into something they could start to get their heads around better. And I also found that when I spoke with my regular clients, in the Pilates studio, on the massage table, and started to describe what pain actually was, some light bulbs started to go off, and they started to get a little bit more of a sense of like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. I didn't know that that's what pain is in my body. I didn't understand how this actually this perception comes about. And they were able to start asking some better questions of their own body, of their healthcare professionals. And that really, I think, is a powerful tool. So that's what this comes from, right? Before we get started, though, I'm curious about why you all decided to spend a Friday night talking about pain. What's it's not something that everybody chooses to do. And it's funny, there's a joke in this because I actually, a friend of mine said, hey, you want to come to this social club tonight? And there's an accordion, it's accordion music, which I think that sounds fantastic. But I was like, actually, I have to go talk about pain. And I was like, somewhere in there there's a joke. But actually, I love both. I like to talk about pain and I love the accordion. So, but I'd like to know, would anyone mind sharing, why did you want to come and hear about this topic? Why is this interesting?
Well, I'm getting older and I'm getting arthritic, and I hurt in a lot of different places at different times.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Is that something that resonates with others? No. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people, great, nodding your heads.
Getting over and having these phantom pains. They pop up for no apparent reason, and they could be gone in the morning. So it's like, well, what was that?
Right.
What? Or a pain in a place that comes and goes and you don't know what you've done to help it or trigger it.
Yeah. What was the purpose of that?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Good. Are there other things that,
And I would say, when you're having pain, in a certain spot, like with me, it's my knees mostly, but other parts of my body too. The question is always, should I stop doing everything because I might hurt myself even more? Or once I get feeling better, usually with some physical therapy or something, I always have this, reminder, oh, it could happen again, how careful so it's kind of like, is there a way to address that and not necessarily feel afraid that you're going to hurt yourself?
Yeah.
And then get the pain that comes with it. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a pretty universal experience. Yeah. Like all of the questions about like, what does it mean? Should I push? Should I stop?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Because we've all experienced that both can be helpful.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to discern.
Yeah.
And we'll see at the end if this clears things up or not. But I'm a big believer that the more we kind of, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And the more we can kind of understand what's going on inside and around us and how our body is interpreting that information, then we can start to maybe, hopefully, ask a few questions of our body and ourselves and come to some different conclusions.
Yeah.
All right, good. Any other reasons and why this interested you? Those are all really fantastic reasons. Okay, good. Oh, yes. Hello, Leslie.
One of my inquiries right now is to actually determine what the pain is pain growth, like is like what the uncomfortable part, because what one person describes as pain is completely different to somebody else. So just basically just kind of putting some parameters around that. It's really relative to the person that I'm talking to or listening to or in myself. Like, so kind of hearing, I think just that more clear, I think just, you know, like you're going to get into it, but mine is kind of, is it pain? Is it actually pain or is it something else?
Right. Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. Well, great. Good. So thank you for sharing those. And there are no wrong answers, right? Like these are the reasons why we come to try to figure out how to care for ourselves. It's also the reasons why we end up coming to Pilates studios or do gyro or get a massage, is to be able to handle some of the things that we come up with in our lives, whether it's an injury or a chronic condition or, you know, just kind of like this pain comes and goes and I don't even understand it, right? But you know, there are a lot of different ways to manage these situations. So thinking about it too is cool, right? How many people really stop and go like, what is pain? Right? It's cool. So one thing that I just want you to do for a second, I'm gonna give everybody like maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes to just in your own mind, come up with what would be like a 3-4 sentence definition for pain. How would you like to write it in a dictionary? You don't have to tell me yet. You don't have to share it at the end, but just take a moment and I want you to actually think about, okay, so how would I define pain? Just take a second and do that for yourselves. It doesn't have to be a big treatise. Think about the qualities, the situations, relationships, all those types of things in which you might define pain. We're going to check back in just a little bit. Okay, you guys gonna have that in your head a little bit. Sometimes if you were my students, I'd have you write it down, but you know, I'm not grading. Okay, so before we go to that, we're gonna do a little bit of an exercise here. What I'd like to do is start by putting here on this piece of paper situations that a person might choose to get involved in. This might be, you know, an event, any kind of activity, anything that they choose to do on purpose, knowing there is a possibility that there will be pain. Anything you can come up with? They'll start to flow.
Gardening.
Gardening, cool. Gardening, so you know that it might cause some pain, but you're going to do it. Okay. Yeah, fantastic. What else?
Cleaning your house.
Cleaning. Okay.
You try to put it off as long as you can, but at some point.
Okay, so the pain.
You have to choose. To
I'm
do it
hearing a
eventually.
few different types of pain in there. It sounds like. Right.
Pain is
Okay.
not doing it.
Right. Yeah. Cool. What else? Other things that are painful that you know you're going to do on purpose. You're choosing to do. It may not be you. It could be other people. Doesn't have to be you.
Any kind of physical work has a risk of, you know, like heavy lifting is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, heavy
Yeah.
lifting. Yeah. How about maybe I'm seeing a theme here with gardening, cleaning, maybe chores.
Yes.
Chores and physical labor.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Chores and any kind of physical. Physical. Every time I'm spelling in front of people, I panic. So there you go. There's a form of pain right there. Labor. Okay. What else?
People who play sports.
Yeah.
I don't really, but
Sports.
like
Sure.
the football players and well, I guess really any sport can.
sports. Wow. Okay.
Get to be painful, yeah.
Yeah, sports, training.
Training, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I find any kind of physical activity is not structured. So in other words, I might come here for an hour and I work really hard with Kristen or Leslie, or I may go to my yoga teacher and I work really hard on standing poses and all that, have some minor aches and pains while I'm doing it. It's not a big deal. And I may do that on a regular basis and feel, I may go to the gym and I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. And then I go out and work in the yard for say 3 hours one afternoon. And it's like,
You can't stand up.
what's wrong with you, muscles? You work just fine in these structured environments, but
Okay.
now in this unstructured activity where you're involving complex movements of the body altogether, suddenly you're
Okay.
upset and you're sore the next day.
Oh, cool. Okay, so let's see. How are we going to say so
don't know.
unstructured? Yeah, no,
Sorry,
that's
that's
no, I love it.
not
I
a
love
one word.
The thing that I love about this is every single time people come up with something new I haven't heard before, and it's so fantastic. So like things that are more open-ended activities, or physical activities, unstructured physical activities. Okay. All right. What else? I mean, you're sitting in a particular place right now, right? We're in an exercise studio. You mentioned sports and training. A lot of times it's interesting. You guys are a little bit of an outlier to me. Usually the very first thing on the board is exercise. Right? And you brought up exercise, but very often the first thing people say is exercise. Exercise is something I do, and I expect that there might be pain. Right? And how that pain is perceived is obviously different from person to person. But I'm just going to put that on the board. Okay, exercise. What else?
If I consume certain foods, I will experience pain the next day.
Okay, yeah.
Other than alcohol. Primarily.
So our nutrition, different or consumption.
Migraine.
I'm just going to put food and beverage, food and drink. Right? Yeah. Maybe some of the things that feel like in the moment a treat, and then
Yeah.
down the road, maybe not so much.
Sometimes I'm willing to pay the price.
Yeah, food. We'll say treats. Good. Is all pain physical?
No.
What else do we have going on then?
Oh, emotional pain.
Yeah. We could say, can we say relationships? Can we put it that way, at least to start? Let's just spend a little bit of time there. Relationships. Any particular type that you can think of that might a person might choose to get into that are particularly painful? Loss. Yeah, we know that it could come with that, right? Loss. Grief. Yeah. And these are like loss and grief. We don't always get into a relationship for those particular reasons, but we do know that we might experience that, don't we? It could be a result of something that doesn't go the way we had hoped, right? So, and there's lots of different types of relationships. We've got, of course, romantic love, platonic love, the love for our children, the love for our parents, the love for an animal, right? Some of us, some of the biggest expressions of pain that I've seen are people who have lost a pet. It's a big deal. And it's interesting too, like think of, for everybody for just a moment, think about the last time you had an acute injury, like maybe you stubbed your toe or bumped your arm or something, and kind of think about where was that on my body and how does it feel now? Okay, now think about the first time you experienced your first heartbreak. Kind of think about it for a moment. Where was that in your body? Can you still feel it a little bit? Right? Yeah. Like, and how long ago was that? It's been a while. And so what we can recall sometimes most potently isn't even the physical sensation. Right? So it really starts to open up what is pain. One of my favorite ones that one of my students said one time was expectations. Right? I loved that one. Expectations. Expectations can be so painful when they're not met. Right? Anything else on here you guys can think of? I might add a couple. couple more. Right? I'm also going to add, well, I'm going to add childbirth. One of the most physically painful things that many people will say they go through, and yet they choose to sometimes go through it multiple times, right? I'm also going to bring up procedures that are, let's see, procedures. So elective procedures specifically. Surgery. Right, yeah, an elective procedure, and this is kind of, I want to make sure and really zero in on what that is. An elective procedure is anything that is not a actual emergency, right? It is not just about saving a person's life, and that really runs the gamut, right? We're talking about everything from a person deciding that they want to get a mole removed for cosmetic reasons to having a mastectomy because they have breast cancer, right? Big range there in terms of the kind of emotional and experience as well as the actual tissue damage exacted on that individual. But you know, so that could be a big difference there. So that's specifically elective procedures. Right? Anything else you guys can think of? Okay, it's a pretty good list. Now, before we break down how these are associated with what I'm talking about, I want to rate them. All right, this is probably something you've been asked to do before, and everybody really usually is not so fond of being asked on a scale of 1 to 10. Tell me, how does this rate for you? But I'm going to break this down. We're going to do from 1 to 10. How would you rate these? Right? But I'm going to give you some parameters. From 1 to 3 is going to be, you know, really mild pain. You probably don't notice it unless you're sitting still, maybe at the end of the night lying down. You might be starting to compensate a little bit physically, but you don't notice those compensations. It's just, you know, really, really mild. You're probably not even taking a pain reliever of any kind. The next one is 4 to 6. This is where our bodies start to scream a little bit more. We start to notice like, oh yeah, my shoulders are aching. I can't turn my head. We start to baby things a little. Maybe we're starting to develop a limp. We might actually turn our whole body to check the blind spot instead of just turning our head, those types of things, right? Now, from a therapy standpoint, 7 is a big magic number. As a massage therapist, when I'm working with people, I want to know if they're getting close to 7. It doesn't mean we won't stay there for a little bit, but I want them to let me know because I don't want to stay there long. After that, it's hard for them to relax, right? So it's a point at which I'll spend a moment and then back out. 8, 9, and 10. This is now really serious pain where it's unsustainable, right? People are now starting to call into work and they might need, they have to see a doctor. They might be starting to find ways to self-medicate, all of those types of things, okay? So looking up here, are there any things that you can see that would be in the 1 to 3?
We generally classify the pain after things like gardening or
Yeah, like
chores.
the pain that you're going to feel after or during. Yeah, depending on what that is. Yeah. 1 to 3. Any of these?
That would be cleaning for me.
Cleaning?
Yeah,
Okay.
that one's not a challenge.
That doesn't feel like that big. Right. Okay.
I'd go with gardening too.
Gardening's a 1 to 3. All right. I'm glad to hear that. I do know people who had to give up their gardening, right? And it was a real pleasure for them. And that's another kind of pain.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Other things that might be a 1 to 3 up here?
Some exercise
Yeah.
is, that's why you can keep doing it.
Right.
And actually, that's a good discomfort, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Like, oh, this is like, I don't mind it.
Yeah,
I'm expecting this.
This feels like I've done something good.
Right. Right. What else? Anyone's up here that are any more 1 to 3s up here? How?
The chores and the unstructured activities to me are kind of the same.
Okay.
They would not be 1 to 3.
They would not be a 1 to
They
3?
would not. no.
Okay, all right, well, how
But
about
I'm
then
thinking They could be the 4 to 6.
the 4 to
or-
6?
Yeah,
Okay, so chores might be 4 to 6. Unstructured activities might be 4 to 6. What else is a 4 to 6? Are chores physical labor, are those kind of the same thing?
yeah.
Okay,
think
what
so.
else? What about food and treats? I guess it depends on just how
Well,
much we had fun.
I get my brain like you do.
Yeah.
That,
It
that,
can
that
vary.
exceeds the 7.
Yeah. that's
Right,
fine.
yeah, like how, yeah, right, it's just how big, okay, so that could be anywhere for, we're gonna say that could be 4 to, we're saying maybe even into 8, 9, 10, is that what we're
Well,
saying?
Yeah, 10 will take you to the hospital.
Well, that's right, that's right, how about, we'll say 7-ish, 7, 8, is that fair?
4 to 8.
4 to
Hey,
8,
There
okay,
you go.
I like it, what else? We've got sports, relationships, loss, grief, childbirth, elective procedures, expectations.
Maybe expectations.
Expectations might be a 4 to 6.
Can be, yeah,
Okay.
especially depending on how old you
Ah,
are. You're a teenager, it can be pretty.
Oh, you're crushed. Yeah,
Yeah.
truly,
yeah, you're in therapy.
right? Yeah. So maybe we actually might need to go all the way up to 10 with that.
Yeah,
one,
right.
huh? Woo, yeah. Once we bring, if we're bringing teenagers in, a whole bunch of things might need to happen there, huh? Yeah. How about like loss and grief? Is that a 4 to 6 or are we going higher?
Higher.
Yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
higher.
So let's go up into that area, right? So we're probably beyond 7 now, right? So we're up here into the 8 to 10. What else is an 8 to 10 on here?
Childbirth.
Childbirth, what I've heard.
You know, I do talk to the occasional person who's like, "Eh," but
Oh, I know.
usually,
Yeah.
usually, you
There are
know,
lucky people out there.
the thing is that very often when things go as planned, the thing was after the fact, it's hard to remember that particular pain.
Yeah.
Right? We'll get to that. But in the moment, it's pretty unsustainable.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Same thing with elective procedures with surgeries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And even that can get a little
Oh, Lord.
interesting,
Did I have
right?
to do that?
What's that?
Did you have to do that?
Yeah,
Why did I do that?
Yeah, yeah, well, there's that too. It's interesting, we're sports.
I think that could be all over the map. I mean, like if you're injured, but
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure if you're a professional football player, there's times when you feel pretty
Sure.
rough after a game.
Sure. And how about relationships?
Same thing all over the
Yeah.
map.
Right, all over the map. I mean, because like the pain of a crush that's still forming, that's pain, but man, it's fun. Versus the pain of now that didn't work out and it's just heart wrenching. Yeah. So yeah, huge big range there. Yeah. So obviously this is it can be a little bit subjective though too, isn't it? So now the next thing that I want to ask you is what is it about this list that is special? Why did we put these things up here? Why did you choose these things?
Experiences.
Their experiences? Okay. What kind of experiences?
Gardening, relationships,
Painful.
loss.
Painful experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really kind of baked into the question that I asked, right? Is like, these are things that you are choosing to do. All right. These are the things that we're going to assume you gave, or a person, doesn't have to be you, gave consent over. Right.
Okay.
And that's a big deal. Right. And consent is really equal to control, right? Or part of consent is control. So I'm going to put that up in here. I'm going to put control, and we're going to build out kind of like part of what consent is. But if you kind of cast your eyes around this and imagine going through any of these particular activities or situations when it's not something that you consented to, it was forced upon you. Just kind of put your mind in any of those and ask yourself, how does that change the pain scale? Suddenly, this is against your will. What happens to the pain scale?
Yeah, it's up. It goes up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So control is a really big thing, a person having a sense of autonomy over their body, right? So that word consent. But consent it's not just about control, it's also about informed consent, right? So that's an important part too. Knowledge. So the knowledge of what's going to happen to me. How is this going to work out? So you might be, let's see, you might be coming in specifically, you're going into go through childbirth, right? And you're expecting to have a vaginal delivery, and your hopes and dreams are pinned on that, and something doesn't quite go as planned, and now a person is having a C-section, right? And so suddenly the knowledge of what they thought was going to happen has shifted. And this is a really common thing. I've spoken with a lot of women who ended up having C-sections, and their experience of pain was really quite high, especially if it wasn't something they were planning. I had 2 C-sections, both ended up having, I knew way in advance that this was going to be necessary. And I was up and walking around the hospital 8 hours after both of them. It's not because I'm a superhuman. It's because I, in many ways, got to know ahead of time what was expected, what I knew. I didn't feel like I had failed. All those other kind of emotional expectations didn't come into play, right? So that was an interesting little lesson for me. But knowledge, what's going to happen? How is this going to play out? Why am I, what can I expect? So that's another thing. Again, you can kind of imagine going through any of these, if something shifts and changes, all of a sudden, the pain scale might go up. The next one is why, right? So we have to have a why. What's the purpose, right? There needs to be purpose. And a purpose can change a lot of things, okay? If you don't know why you are doing a chore, if you don't know why that relationship didn't work out, if you don't know why you're having to exercise or eat certain things, or you don't know why the thing hurts after doing the thing, and there's a certain amount of fear there, that amplifies it. And fear is always a pain amplifier, right? So these together are all really important in our experience and perception of these stimuli, okay? So what we've done here is actually created a very loose model of our nervous system, right? Up here is our central nervous system. Our higher brain is up here. We have coming down from the brain, the spinal cord, and then we have the peripheral nervous system that comes out, and all of these little things that we wrote down here are actually stimuli, right? And our body perceives, our nervous system perceives these different stimuli, and they might be happening outside or inside, and it goes up the spinal cord into the brain, where our brain starts to go, what should I do with this? What do I do about this? It interprets it. And then based on that interpretation, it turns around a directive: flinch, sit down, walk away, run, continue, whatever that may be, right? So this is a very loose model of this, but it's an important one to start to understand, okay? Now, obviously, as we start to have information or stimuli thrown at us that we're not in control of, that doesn't meet any of these criteria, that starts to shift. Our perception and our pain scale goes up. Right? Any thoughts about that, or does this kind of speak to some of your own lived experiences?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing any particular thing? Do you have like something you're landing on?
It's a vague thing that I'm putting together. So it was interesting that the timing of this. I have I'm having a health challenge, but I don't have any symptoms of illness other than gums that are not healing. And somebody just gave me a video of a woman that was talking, and she does acupuncture, and she was talking about a brain that's balanced or not.
Okay.
And if your brain is not balanced, which this is kind of speaking to that, you're not going to be able to heal. So you may be going that direction.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe,
Yeah.
there, it sounds like we're talking about
You're looking
similar
at
things
this
here.
whole list of things that affect it,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, potentially, absolutely, absolutely. And there are different types of pain, and we're going to get to that in a moment, right? And different reasons around it.
Right.
Okay. So actually, what I want to hear now, and you can also tell me, think about the definition you had. Has anything shifted just from this little conversation, this little exercise? And if it hasn't, that's okay. But would anybody be willing to share your definition? How would you define pain? Yes, Leslie. Oh, no,
Sorry, I'll open it.
there you go.
Pain is what I feel when pushed past my threshold to manage something.
Okay, thank you. Pain is what I feel when I push past my threshold to manage something. Great, thank you.
I guess for me, it's a little bit more, I feel a little more complex because to me, there's different kinds of pain.
Okay.
And they manifest different characteristics.
All right.
So I would I broke my back 3 years ago and in the process herniated a couple of lumbar discs. And I still have a lot of sciatica in that. But I would classify the pain I experience from the sciatica as quite different from what I experience when I'm having a migraine. And it's also different from what I experience if I've had like an injury of some sort. So the pain from my back break was actually very small, but the sciatica was quite serious. And that all depended on how I moved my body and how I flexed it. And that's still there today. It's much improved. But I find the type, I call it neuropathic pain, the pain that I feel from the sciatica is neuropathic pain. I'm just saying that in the sense that that's like a direct stimulation of a nerve, as opposed to a nerve signaling me that I've done something to my body that it needs to let me know about, right?
Okay.
It's important
Okay.
at some level, whether it's a cut or a broken bone or whatever. But you can damage your body sometimes quite significantly and not. I broke my leg, and I didn't have any pain from the leg at all.
Yeah.
It was just it was a simple fracture. Didn't have to have a cast, and I couldn't put any weight on it for about 10 weeks. But it didn't hurt.
Isn't that interesting?
I just frustration was worse.
Yeah. Not
Oh, that doesn't hurt.
having to wait 10 weeks was what was painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is different from the pain I experience when, say, I work out really hard and my muscles get sore. That's a different kind of pain.
Yeah. So there are all these different qualities of
Right.
pain.
And I don't think
Yeah.
I can come up with a description that encompasses all of them because they're all
Yeah.
quite
And
different. And
yeah.
they all are different to manage. So I've had migraines since I was in my 20s, and I've learned how to cope with those mostly. I find the sciatic pain really hard to cope with. It's a different quality of pain altogether, and it's extremely hard for me to ignore.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That
That's a
kind
more
of goes
No,
complex answer.
please.
to the
That's
control
fantastic.
thing though, doesn't it? Like the
Yeah.
control, like pain that you've learned how to almost rest in.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
very familiar
as
with it.
as
I know
opposed to
its
a pain,
cycles.
a knee
Yes.
pain
Yeah.
that you don't know how to rest in
Right.
that.
Right.
And you
Yeah.
may not know what its purpose is, but you know what to expect,
Yeah.
right? And you know it's not going to kill you.
Whereas something like the sciatic pain, I know
Yeah.
that it's going to be okay unless I make certain flexion movements. But I want to make some of those flexion movements because I want to, right? And so there's a certain anticipation that I know, and it'll vary a little bit from day to day, but I know based on anticipation then if I'm not careful, I will pull back because I know I'm going to experience that.
Yeah. No,
So
this
the
is great.
anticipation, kind of its own little torture, right?
Yeah, the expectations and anticipation, the fear.
Mhm.
It's fear, right? Like, anticipation is maybe a kinder way to say fear. It's not up there, but it's in there, right? It's a flavor. And why is this happening? How long will it last? And will this one be the time that I can't stand back up? Or all of those things. And it's those unknowns that really make these situations, I think, spike. Again, they're pain amplifiers. And there's a reason for it. Really good reason for it, in fact, that we're going to get to in a moment. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was a good definition. It's great. You're all good definitions. Yeah. And would either of you like to share your definitions? Or are they different in any way?
Mine was extreme physical discomfort for physical pain.
Okay. Yeah. Extreme physical discomfort. Pretty to the point. Good. Good.
Yeah, I look at discomfort is something that is not so limiting. Pain is when it hurts enough that I can't do something,
Okay. Right.
So,
It actually keeps me from the things I want.
yeah.
Okay. Good. Good. So believe it or not, there's actually a group of people who sit around and think about pain even more than I do. Right. And they're called the International Association for the Study of Pain. That's what they do. And in 1979, they created this definition. So I'm going to read it to y'all. It is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage or described in terms of such damage. Right? That sounds like something a lawyer would write, isn't it? And the first few times I read it, I was like, what does that even mean? But the more I started to really study it, the more it's actually quite brilliant.
Yeah,
And there's
pretty
do you like it?
Mhm.
Yeah. Can you tell me what you like about it, David?
good. Mike.
Mike, gosh, I'm sorry. I was
well,
so
I-
confident in that too.
I find
His
it.
name is David. Can I call you
respond to
David?
lots of things. So I find it very succinct. I don't think it quite includes everything. I don't think my sciatic pain would actually come into that.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I mean, the ultimate root of it was damage. But the current problem has more to do, as long as the nerve is left alone, it's just fine. But when I move certain ways, something, probably my piriformis is kind of pinching on it or pushing on it. And it doesn't like that.
Very common.
So that's a little different, but I mean, you could broadly include it under that category. But no, I think that's a very,
You like this one?
it is one of those definitions you have to think about.
Yeah, it's a little like, wait, are we talking about a physical experience, or are we talking about, an article in the Constitution or something like that? It's very like, but so the two words that I find really interesting in here are the word and, sensory and emotional, and the word potential, right? So notice they're not saying it could be sensory, it could be emotional. It's both. That is what they are saying. And that is true, right? We look up here and we start to see there's a whole lot of context that starts to get built up around how we perceive different things. And there's a whole lot of other stuff we didn't put on the board here, right? But there is always an emotional quality to that. And if suddenly our expectations aren't met around it, or I don't know the purpose why, or I'm afraid, or I'm agreeing to do this, but I don't want to do it. I'm doing this against, like, I really don't like that I'm having to do this, but I'm doing it, right? All of those things can start to change the context, and therefore that emotional experience also impacts sensory experience. They go together, right? The other one is potential. The word potential is such an interesting one. It says actual or potential. And this is kind of the light bulb one for a lot of people. Like, what do you mean potential? Right? What does that seem strange or curious to any of you?
I think that's where,
That's the
that's
fear.
actually where my side,
Yeah.
because the potential is there. That's what I'm anticipating.
That's right. That's right. We're gonna get into that. So that was in 1979. They updated it. So if you were to look at up this now, you'd find it a slightly different definition. And that came up in guess what year? 2020. Not because of COVID, not because we were suddenly going through a massive pandemic. They were already in the works of that. It's just really kind of lovely timing that it worked out that way. But this is the difference. Okay, now it says an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with or resembling that associated with actual or tissue damage, right? And they changed that. They added that little bit right there because primarily nurses were viewing their patients. And remember, nurses are the people who are usually on the front lines of everything. They're the ones who are actually bringing in medications and changing IV lines and turning people over and doing all that hard work. And they're the ones that are really observing how the patient is doing. And what they were really seeing is that especially people who were not able to communicate because maybe they're in a coma, maybe they're neonates, whatever reasons they may be, they were still showing these examples of physical pain or emotional pain, even by little grimaces, guarding, intake of breath, holding of breath. All of those things are physical signs. So they wanted to make sure that that was something that was being brought up and that those people were being included. It also was meant to encompass animals, right? Because of course an animal can't say this is what hurts. And often they're really good at hiding it, right? There's a couple other definitions. Nurses will often say pain is what the experiencing person says it is whenever they say they are experiencing it, period. Believe the patient, believe the person, don't quibble with them. And then Lorimer Moseley, who's an Australian man, who I really suggest all of you take a look at. I've brought one of his workbooks here. I've brought a couple of books today. He has a book, this one is just a workbook, but he has a lot of really wonderful things on YouTube. He's funny, he's interesting to talk to. I think he's had some TED Talks, so he's got kind of that vibe, right? And what he writes is pain is an unpleasant conscious experience that emerges from the brain where the sum of all available information suggests that you need to protect a particular part of your body. Now, I don't know that it's really conscious. I kind of take a little bit of issue with that because a lot of times people who are in pain, their body will start to work around it and they'll start to find a limp or they'll hike a hip and they'll do these things and they don't even realize they're doing it. And so instead of it being a conscious action, they might even say, I'm not in pain anymore, that's gone. But now they're limping, they're compensating, they're exhausted, they're sleeping a lot. They can't kind of keep up with some things. That's also pain. It's just been kind of covered up and layered. So I'm not so sure that it's always conscious, but most definitely it's a desire to protect. Okay? Any of these definitions speak to you or have issue with?
I would agree with you on the unconscious. What you do unconsciously. Yeah, that resonates. Actually, they all do. The nurses one too.
The nurses one is so specific and
Yes.
clear, isn't it? Yeah. It's what the person says it is. And I'm just curious, has anybody been to a doctor or had a professional tell you that maybe what you were experiencing wasn't real
Yes.
with your pain? Yeah. And I'm sorry, because that's not okay. It's really not
No,
okay.
it wasn't okay.
No, it's really not. I've had that too. And it's not even like, oh, this is all in your head. It's like, you're very sensitive. You're a very sensitive person.
Yes.
And like, oh, really? Is that what you're going to tell me?
That's what you
It
get.
doesn't
Yeah.
help.
It's just their way of saying, oh, they don't really know.
That's
Yeah.
right. I don't know how to help you anymore.
Yeah.
You're just a very sensitive person, and I thank you, maybe. Right. So that kind of unwillingness to just say, yeah, You say you're in pain, you're in pain. Let's figure out how to get to the root of it. What's causing it? Yeah. So I have a feeling, whoops, I just jumped over a bunch of things there. I have a feeling now you are all going to be able to do something pretty easy, and that is, say we've defined pain or given us some definitions of pain, but what's its purpose? What's the purpose of pain? If this is something that our brain has a certain amount of control around, what's the purpose of that?
Well, some of it must be to signal you to stop damaging your tissue.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's an alarm system. It's an early warning system. That's what pain is. This is an early warning system saying you are touching a hot pan. Let go of that right now, right? Or if you bend over, I'm really worried that that sciatic nerve is going to trigger, and I don't like that. We don't like that, right? I have been hurt before in relationships, and I don't want to do that again. And I'm starting to feel panicky, right? Those are all kind of the same thing, right? So that is the purpose of pain. It is an early warning system. It's the way our body keeps us safe. And the thing that's really interesting is our body really just has two jobs, only two jobs. The first one is to maintain homeostasis. So that's massive. That's a big multi-pronged job that, you know, we have to call on all the different parts of us. And the second job is to do our bidding. And that second job is often running counter to the first job, right? And the way that our nervous system helps to maintain homeostasis is by keeping us safe. And so what it does throughout our entire life is it takes in this information, right? I stuck my hand under hot water. Ooh, not going to do that again. I'm going to remember that, right? I dropped a heavy pan on my toe. I know that I need to look down and see if I broke a bone, right? Because if I don't look down, maybe I'm going to walk on this thing, right? Like this is a way that our body protects us, and it's the nervous system doing that part. That is its primary function. Yes, it's relaying information out and sending out instructions, but it's really all around keeping us safe. And so it's constantly clocking our internal and external environment. Okay. Have you all heard of a condition called a genetic insensitivity to pain? Well,
Yeah.
what do you know about that, Mike?
You don't want it.
You do not want that.
It means you basically can't perceive physical pain.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And I heard, were you saying
I've
you're,
heard of it too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's this really serious condition. This is something that usually people don't survive their childhood. It's very rare to meet somebody who is, you know, past, I'd say puberty really, who has survived that. They don't know where the safe edges of the world are. They get into the hot scalding water in a bath and they don't even know that they're being burned. They jump off high out of high trees and don't realize that they broke a bone, except for the fact that, well, I see it, but they don't feel that pain. It's a really dangerous situation to be in. So we know that our nervous system is trying to protect us, right? But there are a couple of different types of pain, and you've already alluded to that. I think you've all talked about it a little bit. So there's acute pain and chronic pain, right? Everybody familiar with those terms? Okay, acute pain, there are some definitions around it. Some people disagree on whether it's 3 to 6 months, but somewhere in there, anything beyond that, we're starting to move into chronic. But acute pain, there's a good reason for it. We start to see a healing action, and eventually the pain goes away, right? That is our nervous system functioning as it was meant to. And it's going to send out pain signals first at the onset. Ooh, you just touched, you just put your hand under hot water. And then it's going to continue to feel painful every time you touch it. So you don't keep bumping it. You don't break the blister. You don't wound it more. And then eventually it's better, right? Chronic pain, however, is different. Chronic pain is actually now considered a condition of its own. And it is the nervous system no longer functioning as it was intended to, right? This is now, the nervous system is now reading danger signals even when they're not there, right? And what's really interesting is that chronic pain and PTSD have essentially the same pathways. All that, you know, they're really essentially the same situation in the nervous system. It's just that the body is finding different ways to show its symptoms. Right? Is that a surprise to anybody? It feels it's pretty true, isn't it? It feels true. We experience these things.
I think the new part is just sort of formal medicine is now beginning to pay a lot more attention. Sort of connection between fear and what you perceive. I think they're just they're more likely to say, yeah, there really is some kind of something going on here in the axis, brain blood axis here.
Yep.
I've read recently that there are techniques to help people that are in that situation. I don't know whether that's what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, and what I'm really talking about here is how all this works in our body, kind of the anatomy and physiology of pain.
Yeah.
It's outside my scope to be suggesting a therapy, but I can talk
sure.
about them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's a lot of work around the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory. Have you guys heard about the polyvagal theory? Is fantastic. And it's working specifically with the vagus nerve, which is our longest nerve, cranial nerve in the body. It is really the nerve that is in control of our autonomic nervous system. It determines whether or not we should be rest and digest, fight or flight, or shut down. Right? And there are some pretty big organizations now that are starting to use polyvagal theory as ways to manage chronic pain and PTSD. Kaiser and the Veterans, the Veterans, I want to say Institute, VA Association, thank you. I just want to say Institute. They're both using polyvagal theory as a way to help treat both of those conditions. And they're getting great success with it. And really what it is helping a person to cognitively understand when they're actually in danger and when they're not.
Yeah.
And so it's really a form of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Hence the similarity to PTSD.
They're both, yeah, I mean, again, yeah, these two are really kind of the same thing. It's just our bodies are choosing different ways to manage it. Very often people are experiencing both. It's not uncommon for a person who's experiencing chronic pain, especially when they don't have something very specific to point to, and also experiencing some form of PTSD or anxiety, right? There's also what's called, it's another one called mechanical pain, right? Or, a mechanical pain is kind of what we feel after we've exercised, or sometimes when you've mentioned arthritis, right? It comes up from time to time. There's a reason for it. You know, the weather's damp, got the hip or the knee that's a barometer, and all of a sudden the pressure changes and is creating pain. Body says, you should probably slow down. Maybe it's not the time for a big walk or whatever, right? That's a different thing. We had a really good workout on the reformer, and the next day we're feeling a little sore. It's a good pain, right? Called mechanical pain. It's not acute. We didn't really, I don't want to say we didn't damage, because in order to get stronger, we actually have to break down muscle fibers, and the building up is what makes it stronger, but it's not the same as acute pain in the sense that I need to baby this for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to know when.
You can tell the difference.
You absolutely can. Yeah.
What the condition is called, but the CrossFit community became famous for it because you could basically work your muscles so hard, and your muscles are throwing off byproducts, right? Waste byproducts.
Mhm.
You can work things so hard, so in such a short amount of time, that your kidneys are unable to process the waste products efficiently. So your urine will turn brown, which is kind of scary, and you'll have a huge amount of fatigue and pain. And the solution is you just got to stop, sit down, and let your body process that and recover. There's a term for it. I can't remember. But
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I have two friends that have been through it. It's very common for people who are new to CrossFit, because it's very intense, form of exercise, and they go 2 or 3 times that first week, and it's like, their body just starts shutting down on them.
Yeah, I have to question that training a little bit.
Yes.
Sounds counterproductive.
Yeah, there's a time when pushing through the pain is important, but there's a time to just take a step back. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that they were doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in certainly from time to time working to muscle failure. I think that can be a great way, but we don't need to blow up our kidneys.
This is working,
to do it.
basically large groups of muscles in your body to access.
So the type of pain that usually we're talking about, where we're like, why is this coming and going all the time, right? And there's no rhyme or reason. It actually is a form of chronic pain. It's not always the same thing happening, because our bodies are, when it feels like something is not quite safe, the nervous system's decided something's not quite safe, and I'm not sure what it is. I can't pin it down. We can do a therapy, we can work on something. Oh gosh, that feels better, but now my knee's hurting, or gosh, now my neck hurts, or whatever it is. It can kind of move around, because until we really get our nervous system feeling actually it's safe. Like there's nothing in my environment that is threatening. There's nothing at home that's threatening. None of the people that are here are about to attack me or insult me in a way that I'm going to feel horrible about, right? Those are all ways that we could feel really, really uneasy. Once we can kind of get to a place where we can genuinely feel safe in our own body, and then that's when those types of pains that come and go without without obvious reason, it's easier to kind of talk them away and understand them, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about the little like, oh, I woke up this morning, my hips feeling a little tender, because maybe I did do a little bit of gardening and I sat too long in that one place, and sitting too long, your body's going to go, move, that's dangerous, right? Okay. Have you guys heard of nociceptors?
What?
Nociceptors. Yeah. Nociceptors are a type of nerve that we have in our body, and they specifically are made to help to draw stimulus that might be painful up into the nervous system and then kicks it back down again, right? So nociception is not the same as pain. Nociception is simply our body managing the possible stimuli, or managing the stimuli that could create pain, right? And I'm going to show you some differences in a moment of the way that our nerves work and the sizes and how fast they are. Our skin has a really large number of nociceptors in it, right? It's very sensitive, as we know, to touch. The number of free nerve endings, which is what a nociceptor is, are just so are so vast in the skin. So like millions within the size of a quarter, right? Really, really amazing number of them. And I want to show you this little thing here. This is a dermatome, or a map of dermatomes. Have you ever seen anything like this? This is really interesting. So our organs are not capable of sending out a lot of pain signals. And there's a really good reason for that. They're so active that if they were constantly perceiving nociception, then we would constantly be having pain from all of this. But what our body has done really, really smartly is it said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to have your kidneys actually experience pain all day long, because they're working 24/7, but we're going to refer pain to this area right here, right? So when people go to a doctor and they're like, yeah, I'm feeling all of this pain around my flank and it hurts a lot. One of the things the doctor needs to take a look at is, okay, how are the kidneys doing, right? The most famous one is, of course, you're having a heart attack. Where do you feel it? Shoulder and down the arm, maybe up into the jaw. That's because our heart doesn't have a lot of nociceptors. So instead, it refers them down to the arm and up into the jaw. For women, over into the left arm or the right arm as well. Right? Isn't that incredibly intelligent, though, of our bodies? Yeah. Like, we're not going to make you feel the constant inner workings of your body, because that would be too much. But we are going to find a way to communicate this out and hope that some really smart person eventually puts it together, and they did. Pretty incredible. Just looking at this
Yeah,
map, does
really.
this, are you kind of like, wait a minute, I know that place.
Yeah, I knew someone once that had back pain along the thoracic lumbar interface in that area.
Where it's dark
For
blue?
quite some time, yeah, he went to orthopedist and they couldn't find anything wrong. And anyway, it went on for a while, and it turned out that he actually had a case of pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
It was too late by the time they discovered that, but
Sorry. to hear
that was apparently a case of this referred from this body, like you say. It was trying to feel it somewhere, but
It was
nobody
really
could
trying to
interpret
tell
it right.
people, yeah, it was sending out the signals and saying,
Yeah.
hey, I've got information for you. Yeah, yeah. I woke up one morning and was just in extreme pain around my flank, just like this, and I couldn't figure out what's going on. I was like, did I exercise in some way? What's going on? I thought I had maybe just really strained my back. Took a long time to get there. I'm not going to go through all the sequence of events, but it turned out that what happened is my renal vein, my left renal vein is varicose. I'm sorry, my left ovarian vein is slightly varicose. And it doesn't happen on the right side, but on the left side, the ovarian vein actually attaches to the renal vein. Oh, doesn't happen on the, it goes to the vena cava. But on my right or on my left side, it did that. And so my kidney was sending out signals. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was feeling exactly that, what you see there in that kind of lighter blue around the flank. So super smart little system there. Our bodies have ways of telling us what's going on. We have to just kind of learn how to listen to that. Here are some nerve fibers here. Now I was saying that there's the nociceptors, right? Nociceptors are depicted there in that little thin red one, the C. The other ones are wrapped in what's called a myelin sheath. It's this fat. And what that does is it helps the electric signals of the nervous system move really fast. Nociceptors are slow, and that's a really good thing. It gives our brain time to figure out what's going on a little bit. It gives it a moment to pause. So what happens is when we perceive stimuli, like let's say we put our hand underneath a hot spigot, the first thing that happens is pressure, mechanoreceptors perceive that we've stimulated the skin. Really fast sensor goes up to the brain, or it might even stop in the spinal cord for something like a burn. And really quickly it says, get your hand out of there. And then a moment later, you start to feel the pain. You know what I'm talking about with that? That's because it took a moment for the really slow little nociceptor movement to actually arrive there and say, yeah, that was going to be dangerous. It's a good thing you pulled your hand out. Right? So it actually takes a moment. Same thing happens where you put your hand underwater and go, oh, it's okay. Right? We do the same thing and then, all right, it's okay. Okay. This is how fast they actually move, the equivalence of them. So it's really interesting. Those, the C fibers, they're way down here at the end. They're moving at about 2.5 miles an hour, as opposed to the A fibers and the beta nerve fibers. These guys actually move nearly as fast as an airplane, right? Of course, they don't have as far to go, so that 2.5 miles an hour feels fast. But compared to these other ones, they are so slow, right? So our body is trying to give us time. It wants to tell us these signals, but it doesn't want us to go into a complete panic right away. It does want to leave our higher brain a little bit of time to interpret, and that's what it does. So our peripheral nervous system, stimulus goes up into through the spinal cord, up into the brain, goes to the thalamus. Thalamus is this great little area that then sends it out to different parts of the brain, and depending on what might need to happen in particular, say if the limbic system has a lot of information from past experience, that's where a lot of our emotional stuff is, it might send out any number of pain stimuli, or for that matter, panicky type feelings, right? Kind of cool to see though how fast our bodies actually move. I know this is a hard one to see and I'm sorry for it. This one though is, I wish I could find a better image of it. The only reason I have this in here is really because it shows the reflex arch so beautifully. But this is incoming information into the spinal cord. And the reflex arc happens right here. This would be like, oh, you've just bumped your elbow on something sharp, or you put your hand under that hot water. It doesn't even have to go up into the higher nervous system. It can stay right here and immediately whoop, whip back around. Right? Other information might need to go up for further analysis. It still doesn't take very long. Unfortunately, that's the end of my slides. It's not the end of our conversation though. So there's a couple of things that I think are really interesting. There's pain threshold and pain tolerance. You all heard about that? Like what's the difference between them, or do you think there is one?
I don't know the difference. I've always wondered about pain tolerance because it really does seem to exist, right?
It does.
About some people,
Yeah.
You know, there's a common thinking that women have a higher pain tolerance than men. I think it's more an individual thing than that, but
Yeah,
I think you can learn more tolerance.
maybe. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Pain threshold is the minimum amount of stimulus that a person has to have in order to start feeling pain.
Okay.
That's the minimum. Whereas pain tolerance is the amount that a person can actually withstand before they start to recoil, right? Most of us have the same level of pain threshold. In other words, if we all put our hand into a bucket of ice right now, most of us would all start to say around the same time, yeah, this hurts, I'm feeling pain. However, threshold is the one that is it's more variable. Some people would start pulling their hand out much sooner than others. For me, I'd be out there so fast. I do not like cold water, right? I know it's supposed to be good for you. I know it's supposed to help you live forever. I don't need to live that long. I'm good, right? But other people swear by it. Yeah. So that is the difference. And yes, I mean, people are choosing to jump into really cold vats of water and building their tolerance. So you're right. It can be trained.
Right. But in general, the sort of tolerance level it seems to naturally vary to
Yes.
some extent.
Tolerance absolutely does.
Do they know anything about what mediates that characteristic? Why does it vary?
Not that I know of. Maybe someone else does. I don't know if it's the number of nociceptors. I don't know if it's maybe because somebody's the thalamus or other parts of the brain are more nimble or less so, or what. I have no idea. I don't know what that is. But you're right. There's a big variance in how much pain a person can tolerate. However, we will all pretty much start to perceive it at the same time. Yeah, for the same reason that the congenital insensitivity to pain is not well understood. And people can have a normal set of nociceptors that are firing exactly as expected and still have that condition. So it's really not understood. And I think that's one where if they could figure that one out, maybe a lot of other things would come into play. Because what's not working there? Yeah. So the sensitization of our systems is really kind of the thing that we have to start to have a conversation about, right? Some of the sensitization is really appropriate. We are we evolved to experience pain. It would be evolutionarily disadvantageous, did I say that correctly, to not feel pain. We wouldn't have made it this far, right? And our bodies aren't going to stop that anytime soon. So the way that we have to start to understand though is, okay, so I'm experiencing this pain. What does it mean? What's it for? Did I ask for this? Okay, well, I came into the gym and I'm working out and I'm doing my thing. And very often that's like, oh, that's good pain. We like that. I'm getting a massage. I have so many people come in. What kind of pressure you have? I want a deep massage. I want it really deep. I'm like, okay, and I'm not really for that anyway, but then I barely touch and I'm like, ow, that's too deep. And so like, what does that even mean? Right? I don't know what deep means, but I know what it means to me. I don't know what it means to you. Yeah. So starting to ask these questions though is really kind of the thing that's really interesting. So the hypersensitization of the peripheral system. This is where we can start, this is healthy again, right? Like I have a sunburn. It's sensitive right now. I don't want to touch it. That's protection, right? That's a good thing. Whereas chronic pain, this is where this hypersensitization causes hypervigilance throughout the whole body. And that's when it starts to read everything as danger. And so you were asking earlier, like, how do I make the decision between, is this something I should push through? Or is this something that I need to stop and take a minute on and maybe rest now? I've had enough. I wish I had a really, really clear understanding of what to tell you. I think I would be lying if I told you I had the answer exactly. Yeah. But I think to be able to actually ask, okay, well, so what is my body trying to tell me right now? Am I actually, I'm feeling some strain in my joint. I'm feeling like I'm doing this thing and it doesn't feel good. I think maybe I should stop and readdress it in a different way. Or maybe I am done for the day. Versus, this is muscle pain that I felt before. I think I can keep going. Yeah, I know I don't have a good solid answer for it. But the big question is this dangerous to either the local tissue or to my greater system in some way? And if you're not really sure, I think generally speaking, I tend to be a little bit more cautious around that. I'm like, well, let's take a step back here and go drop weight or slow it down or take a break and readdress it again, either in 5 minutes or the next day. But what I have found is that when I can just really look plainly at something, or my clients, when we really look plainly at a thing and go, okay, well, what is the danger here? What is my body trying to say? It's clearly thinks something is scary. What is scary? Yeah. And then to kind of parse it out from there. I'd love to say I had a magic wand. We would all be doing this on like a cruise ship somewhere in the Mediterranean. And that'd be done.
I think sometimes the body is, and I don't know how to easily determine that. I think sometimes it's not just anticipating pain, but it's, so I've worked with multiple myofascial, both PTs and masseuses over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And there's times when they will, by feel, locate an area that they think needs some attention. And there can be times when they push on that area, it's very uncomfortable. And so there used to be one that came here, a PT who had a myofascial background, and she would warn me. She said, I'm going to hold this for 5 minutes. I'm going to hold this pressure for 5 minutes. And it just, the intensity would like go up and up and up and up and up. And then about at the end of minute 4, it would just suddenly begin to fall off.
Yeah.
And drop down. And by the time she let up, it might almost be gone. And it would feel better after that. But it's like at the time it happens, sometimes it's like, I don't think I can bear this. Is it doing harm?
Yeah.
And I trusted her experience. It always worked out. She never hurt me. But it was, and so even though I didn't feel particular pain in that spot, there clearly was some kind of tension.
Mm-hmm.
By the myofascial people, they're talking about tension in the myofascia that she caused to be released. Might be scar tissue, might be other things. Yeah. But she began to get that, and she might have to repeat that more than once, but she got that to release some. And the other kind of pain that's often difficult, I think, to sort out is you perceive something that more or less is what you think of as probably muscle. And you work on it, you do things, maybe your perception is, okay, I do a certain exercise, I improve this. You improve that pain, and then all of a sudden you begin to feel a pain somewhere else.
Yes.
And often what you're doing is you're changing the balance of your physical body. So you didn't cause that harm, but you uncovered maybe a muscle that was like not doing its work, right? But when you improve this muscle, now that's causing that muscle to work more the way it should, but it's not used to it, so it hurts. Or, those
Yeah.
sorts of things.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I mean, so it sounds like the first one almost sounded a bit like trigger point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
similar.
that's such an interesting one to me, so I've done some trigger point, and it's a really specific thing, and you can explain it very scientifically. I'm going to find this little nodule of muscle cells that have become so tight that they cannot release, right? They can't release their ATP.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we think of as like a knot.
It's like a
muscle.
knot,
Yeah.
but it's even just like, it's like maybe 3 or 4 actual muscle cells. And if for a lot of people are like acupuncturists and PTs are actually trained to go in with a needle, right? For those of us that are massage therapists, go in really specifically and hold that pressure for a minimum of a minute and to make it ischemic, meaning that it loses oxygen to the cells. That lack of oxygen causes the sacromeres to break their chain and it relaxes, right? And as a therapist, I know that's going to work. And so I can go in with that kind of confidence, and I can also explain to my client, like, okay, we're not going to do some muscle damage here. We're actually going to get this thing, but it's going to hurt, right? It's going to feel better, but it's going to hurt. And it fits all of these, like the criteria, right? We're going to talk about it. I'm going to explain what's going to happen. We're going to understand that the pain that you have to go through has a purpose and a point and a meaning. And it's been proven, so we go back and do it again, and you're willing to do it again even more, right? The same with the changes that can happen in a body. You're absolutely right. You can fix something, and sometimes it just moves somewhere else and really bugs you, but sometimes that change is also just the body rebalancing.
Right.
Yeah, so how do you know which is which, right? Hopefully what happens, usually if it is just the body rebalancing, usually after 24, 48 hours, things start to kind of come back together a bit, in my experience. But yeah, I don't have a solid, okay, so now this is what you're all going to do, right? Because again, if I did, I'd be saving the world with it. I'd be going out there and telling everybody exactly what it is. But I think that, again, by better understanding what pain actually is, that it serves a purpose. And we have to start to ask, okay, well, so what is the purpose here, and is it actually necessary? It's going to be this exact same thing whether a person is experiencing physical or emotional pain. And often cognitive behavioral therapy is actually something that people will do for both physical and emotional pain, because it's the same process in both directions, right? Any of this new information for people?
Yeah, some of it.
Good. Have
Nice
you?
hear it collected together.
Yes, good. I'm glad. Have you heard of gate theory? Yeah, gate theory is a really interesting one. It's another place where it's by giving the nervous system something a little louder to deal with. It can change the efferent signals coming out of the central nervous system back to the peripheral. And a really good example of that is when you have a really itchy mosquito bite, right? And you start to scratch it. And sometimes, like, have anybody ever scratched enough to actually break the skin?
Yeah.
But man, it feels so good, right? And now you've got a wound, but it doesn't hurt. And right, so what you've done is actually created a louder pain sensation, a louder stimulus than what that initial one was, right? So these are reasons why some people will do tuina, which has to do with different forms of tapping on the body, tapping itself. Has anybody done any kind of tapping? Oh, this is.
Tried it, but I never really, never did it for very long. Right?
Yeah.
So I've always wondered what.
It's a really
unsure
beautiful. Yeah, I first learned about it from a friend of mine who has an in-home daycare, and she does it with the children. And these are little guys. They're all preschool. And when they start to get really upset about something, they'll go over and they'll like tap. And she'll just like, okay, we're going to tap. And it brings them down. And they go through these different channels. And if you look at them, they're all a lot of the same channels that we use in lymphatic work, right? Which I'll be teaching down the road, right? It's also ones that a lot of acupuncturists use, a lot of lines around the chi, right? But it works really well. And what it does is it helps us to kind of reframe what's happening in our experience and bring us back to the body. And it's a way to kind of, okay, I'm not in danger. It's a fantastic
It
method.
seems to have a long history in Chinese culture.
Maybe different forms of tapping
It's
do.
connected with what they call, what is it, Qigong and Tai Chi.
Yeah.
But it's basically that, if you've ever seen films of older people in parks in the mornings in China
Tai Chi.
doing kinds of
Doing their Tai Chi.
you'll often also see them doing like,
Mhm.
you know, there'll be something, not so much tapping, but
It's almost
slapping
like
various
slapping.
parts of
Yep.
their body in sequence.
Yeah.
And that's
That
apparently
lymphatic?
part of that theory.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say exactly what somebody who's doing traditional Chinese medicine or Tui Na or Qigong specifically is doing, but I don't think that it's a coincidence that they
No.
have similar impacts on the body. You know, just like when I started to learn about the lymphatic system, that so many of the lymphatic nodes are also so many of the points that people do when they're doing acupressure and acupuncture, all the same type of stuff.
Yeah,
just
there's
different.
There's something out of the John Barnes myofascial school called unwinding, and I've often wondered if that was really the same principle, because I've seen that in Chinese culture too.
Yeah, I mean they're very the Chinese culture has the oldest written body of knowledge around the human body, and it's quite extraordinary what they can lend to the conversation. One of them being, again, lymphatic work. There's interstitial tissue. You guys all heard of interstitial tissue? This is something that most people know about now. This is the tissue that's right underneath our actual dermis. It's where the majority of our lymphatic fluid actually resides, and it's an organ, and it was discovered to be an organ in, what was it, 2018. 2018, we discovered a new organ, and the guy that presented it went over to China to talk about it, and this man was like, how do you not know this? We've been doing this for 3,000 years. What are you talking about? Like, this is not news to us, it's news to you, and if you've been listening, right? Yeah, so it's quite possible, Mike, that any of those work that way.
Yeah.
But again, my goal with this is not to give you the magic potion. I wish I could, but really to open up the conversation about what is actually happening in our bodies when we experience pain, and then to ask, first of all, is it a problem? It's never something that we necessarily want to feel. It can be unpleasant, but is it actually suffering? There's the difference between pain and suffering, and often, again, that has to do with whether or not it fits into that criteria. So to just be able to frame it a little bit differently and find a different model in which we can start to look at this and have a conversation around, I think is really useful. Right? Any thoughts or questions or things that you might use or think of differently? Okay, it's not. Right. Thank you all very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Took a lot of thoughts and tied them up though.
Yeah, a lot of bits and pieces.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. It's interesting. Oh, and this little book here is a real gem. This is fantastic. The Mystery of Pain. Again, it's going to look more at kind of the process rather than the cure. Right. But I think within the process actually is the cure. That's where it lies. It's what I want to keep drilling in. And please do take a look at Lorimer Moseley. This is a workbook that he has that's based on another book that he wrote. And it's interesting because all the stuff that I'm talking about, this is kind of like what somebody would do and sit down and be like, okay, well, what is my cognitive understanding of what's happening to me? Right. So whether or not people would find this interesting and useful, I don't know, but it encompasses similar information to what I was talking about. you're welcome to. I'm going to keep them out for the moment so you guys can take a look at them. Thank you all very much.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, I will be doing a lymphatic workshop sometime, I think maybe in the fall. And with that, that will be a much more active type of workshop. I will be showing you, or actually teaching you about the lymphatic system, how it, the anatomy and physiology of it, but also how to really interpret it. We clear all of the lymph nodes as well as the tissues of the neck and head. And most importantly, understand again, like, okay, what is going on in this system and when should I interface with it and when should I leave it alone? Because the lymphatic system has become very popular on Instagram and social media, but what nobody is saying is there's times when you actually shouldn't be messing with it. So that's a good part of it. Right? So maybe look for that down the road there. Great, thank you. Thank you, Leslie.
Check.
Yeah,
The
please
name
do
of
take
this
a look.
person.